Hello and welcome to Microsoft Hates Greg. My name is Greg Deckler, and today we're going to be going into a deeper analysis of this visual calculations versus measures. I did a video I did a few videos back, and if you haven't watched it yet, I'll link it at the end of this video. But and so in that video, we basically kind of debunked that no, visual calculations aren't always twice as fast as DAX measures, right? And sometimes DAX measures are faster than visual calculations, but overall, it got me thinking, in terms of like, the initial performance difference, of twice the speed of sort of the equivalent measures based around calculate, in a visual calculation versus in a traditional DAX measure. There was a significant performance difference there, and it got me questioning as to why, if you will. So this is the explanation or the exploration of, at least I don't have the full answer yet because, again, I'm no DAX optimization guru. Still working through Optimizing DAX by Marco Russo and Alberto Ferrari. But here's just kind of an initial analysis of what's going on, and I think it's kind of intriguing in terms of all that. So basically, what I did, and you can see I've got my DAX queries here. And what I did was in Performance Analyzer, right? I just would copy the query and then paste it into here. And then if you're not familiar, and I'm not the world's greatest expert on DAX Studio either, I use it for very specific things. But essentially, I'm not even connected to my data model right at the moment. I just kind of save these off and then I've just open them back up and preserve my query timings. But basically, the easiest thing to do is you paste your query in here, right? You then I usually activate this clear on run, which would be active if I was connected to my tabular model. I'm not. And then you go to advanced and you run the benchmark, right? You click this run benchmark, and then that will give you down here, it'll give you your query plan. It'll also give you your server timings and that sort of thing. All right. So, but before, and this is my PBX file in the background, but I didn't connect to it. So now the interesting thing about this, the very first thing you'll notice is, so here, this is for the visual calculation, which had those 3 visual calculations in it, in that table. And this is the DAX query that's created, okay? And there's quite a bit of information. There's quite a bit of DAX code here. Now, what's interesting in all of that is, like, oh, well, okay, that's, well, that should be normal, right? Well, it's not. So that same table visualization with those 3 DAX measures in it, this is the DAX code. This is the DAX query that's generated by doing it the more traditional route, right? You've got to summarize columns, roll up, add is subtotal, right? And you've got your measures in there. So, and this is more along the lines of what I expect when I get a DAX query and I copy it and paste it. It's usually fairly short, right? This is quite lengthy. So I got, same kind of thing here. I've got the summarize column, roll up, add is subtotal, my sum value, calculate the sum of the value, right? And then I've got, and I've unwound all of this. But anyway, it's kind of interesting that the query plans are so different. I think that's the real takeaway here. And this has got your SumX window, right? This is your calculation, your definition for your visual calculation, right? And it seems to be that this one is, again, your definition of your visual calculation that you created, and then again, and then the rest of this is then, I guess, figuring out and calculating all of that stuff. So that's kind of interesting that there's the query plans, are the DAX queries, I should say, not the query plans, although those are probably different too, are so dramatically different between visual calculations and traditional DAX measures. Okay, so let's take a look at what's going on here with server timings. So the big thing that I noticed about this is that there are a couple things. One, all of the calculation is done in the formula engine, right? There's like 0 milliseconds spent in the storage engine, and there's only one storage engine query, right? So it's basically one query, and what it's doing is it's pulling back table product sum, table value, which, that makes a lot of sense to a certain degree, right? Because everything in that visual, it was related to the sales, right? One was a running total of sales. One was just all of, some of the sales. And then the last one was the ratio, which divided the two. So everything could be, makes sense to me that everything could be figured out from that by pulling back just, hey, just give me a table where of the products where I sum the sales. So there's 5,000 rows in there. Not sure what the 5,003 rows is, but again, not this super expert on this. 80 kilobytes of data. Now, again, this is very different than what we'll see with the traditional DAX measures. The traditional DAX measures have 4 storage engine queries. Now, again, not much CPU, right? They all run very quickly, apparently. The duration's not even, worth scaling, I guess, and again, all of the time is spent in the formula engine. Right. So in this case, we're getting back 5,000 rows, 118 kilobytes. This was kind of interesting to me. It's basically the same as for the visual calculation, but for some reason, it's doing the sum twice, which seemed weird to me. But again, I'm not a huge expert on this. And it's got another one where it's just pulling the products and pulling back all the products. So it's pulling the products and the sums twice, in that query. Then it just pulls just the products. And then it selects the project and the sum from the table. And this is kind of interesting, where the table is in, and it's going to lists all the products, which seems highly inefficient to me, using the in operator for that. And I'm not sure why, because I want all the products. Anyway, so again, I'm not the super expert on figuring all this stuff out. So the query plan obviously is going to be a lot different than what's going on with the visual calculation, because it's for some reason it's has 4 storage engine queries that it performs. So again, I haven't been able to take this to the next step and really analyze what the query plans are doing. But now let's take a look at the no calculate, right? So that one was almost as fast, just a little bit slower than the using the visual calculations. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. And again, you'll see it looks almost like it's basically identical to this one over here. It's just that it's using the no calculate measures here. Now, if we look at the server timings, kind of gets interesting. There's actually 5 storage engine queries. So there's even more storage engine queries. It actually spends some amount of time, 2 milliseconds in the storage engine versus 0 and versus 0, right? So we've pushed certain things down, it seems, down to the storage engine level. But again, the huge bulk of the time, the rest of it is spent in the formula engine. What's interesting to me, again, is that, okay, it does the scans of the table, but we're bringing back 80 kilobytes, 20 kilobytes, and 40 kilobytes versus 118, 80, and 40, right? So what it's pulling back out of the storage engine seems to be much more efficient. These are just one row and 1 kilobyte, right? But they're very similar. So again, this one is, instead of having that double sum, it just has the sum once, which makes more sense to me. This one pulls back row number and value from the table. This one's pulling back just the list of products. This one's pulling back just the entire sum, which that makes sense. That's probably where I do a sum of all. That's probably a query and it just pulls back just that number. And then this is another sum of the table and coalesce of the table value versus the coalesce of the callback of the sales. So again, I'm not an expert in interpreting all this, but whatever is going on in here in the query plan, even though it's 5 storage engine queries and spending some amount of time in the storage engine, somehow that's making it more efficient as far as the query plan and the rest of the calculations that need to go on in the formula engine. Okay, so that was basically the tables, where we had all 3 measures in the tables, right? For the visual calculation, for the traditional calculate measures, for the traditional no calculate measures. Now, the last example that I did was I just said, okay, I'm just going to combine all of the calculations and do a single visual calculation. And also, I'm just going to have, the ratio, basically, the end result within the no calculate. So again, you'll see that I'm defining the column, and here is all of the code, right, for that ratio, right, where I'm saying, okay, there's my running sum, right there is my sales all, and then my result is the divide of those two. And then the rest of this code is apparently, responsible for then doing the calculations within the formula engine, and creating the DAX query, the query plan, and all of that sort of fun stuff. Versus, again, the no calculate, where it's just all one. It's basically the same exact, format. But it only has one measure to calculate, right? So now if we take a look at these in terms of their underlying, so as you might suspect, it's the same, right? It's a storage engine. It's 3,728. All of the time is being spent in the formula engine. There's only one storage engine query pulling back. It's the same query that the other one pulls back. And then the no calculate, in this case, instead of having 5 storage engine queries, it now is down to just 4, with 0 time spent in the storage engine and just 2,470 milliseconds, but all of the time spent in the formula engine. And again, we have our pulling back our product in our table, sum of the table, row number value, pulling back just the products, and then the sum of everything in the table, basically. So what kind of conclusions can we make from this? That's some good questions. I probably have to do some more okay. I have to do some more looking at this. Sorry, I had a pop-up come up at a random. But it makes sense to me to a certain degree that the visual calculation, it knows that everything in that calculation is based around sales and the sum of the sales. So I think it's being very efficient in terms of the queries out to the storage engine. It's basically seems to be able to be smarter about what it's pulling back and what it queries the storage engine for, so that it's only doing a single storage engine query, versus in this case, right? It's the same calculation basically as what's going on in the visual calculation, but it's doing 4 storage engine queries. So yeah, it's interesting to me. It's just digging into this a little deeper. If anybody has some insights into this, I'd love to hear them. But I may, make another video where I kind of try to go just another level deeper into what exactly is going on. But yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to start trying this with more visual calculations, with different, like, okay, let's calculate like sales from this and maybe account rows of products of a products table, and see, do the visual calculations, do they always just generate a single, storage engine query, or will they, query the storage engine more than once? I don't know. Be interesting to start taking a look at this. As far as I know, I haven't seen a lot of people doing anything with DAX optimization, other than Marco and Alberto Ferrari and maybe Tamer Juma and a few people. But I haven't really seen anybody really start to tackle visual calculations. Again, they're in preview. Now, all of that being said, right, for visual calculations and performance and speed, the one thing that you cannot get with visual calculations today is the correct format. Right? So with traditional measures, that are generally available and not beta code, right, I can actually properly format them, versus just, this garbage that I have to live with over here I can't format it as a percentage. So, regardless of performance, there's other advantages to traditional measures versus preview beta features, like visual calculations today. So that is all I had for this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.